The reading today is from Brené Brown. She says, wholehearted living is about engaging our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I'm imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am worthy of love and belonging. And so it is.
So, spiritual leadership. Now, just as Karen said, it's harder to find a song about that. It's equally hard to kind of write a talk about that. And as I was preparing for the talk, it coincided with me coincidentally binge watching The Crown on Netflix. Not on purpose. I didn't do that as my research, but now that I was thinking about it this morning, interesting examples of leadership. So how many people, and you don't have to raise your hand, but if you want to, how many people consider themselves leaders? Okay, there's some. Okay. So what do you think a leader looks like? Any ideas? Strong. Smart. Okay. Fearless. All right. Happy. All those things. Committed. Passionate. Responsible. Strong. Very good. Driven. Smart. Yes. I'm going to just sit down. I'm going to just sit down. Y'all don't need me at all. So and some of you that raised your hands, and some of you didn't, but what if I told you that we're all leaders? Would you believe me? Yes. Okay. So whether we supervise folks or are in charge of companies or projects or anything like that, the truth of the matter is that we are all leaders just by the fact that we're breathing. In our everyday lives, we come in contact with people every day, right? There are no monastic cave dwellers here, are there? So we always come in contact with people every day. And our life has a direct impact on others. How we live matters. Other people are watching you. Whether we like that or not, they are. So have you ever met those folks that just exude passion and energy and excitement and love for life? If you can think about those people in your life. I mean, these people have these personalities that are so magnetic and so amazing. Like, to be in their presence, you just want to be there. You just want to kind of sit next to them, feel their energy, drink whatever they're drinking. And we're filled with this curiosity, like, how in the world have these folks hacked how to bypass all the craziness of life and still live with this joy and passion? I mean, they have just squeezed the love and joy so much out of this life that it's literally just kind of, their mere presence kind of calls forth in us a desire to do the same. Have you been around those people? Now, as I look out here, there's a lot of those people here. There are a lot of those people in this very community that, whether you know it or not, have impacted my life. Seeing your commitment, seeing your love, seeing your passion, seeing your joy, seeing your caring for this community, it calls within me a desire to do the same. So I like to call this space, well, actually, I didn't call it. Brené Brown calls it this space, but okay, I borrowed it from her. This wholehearted life. So Brené Brown talks a lot about wholehearted living and living from this space. So the question for today is, if we're not already doing it, how can we do it? And if we are already living from this wholehearted space, how can we continue to live this life in this way? All right, is everybody ready? Ready. All right. So when we live from this space, like I've said before, it not only impacts our lives, but impacts the lives of those around us. when we tap into our own ability to live wholeheartedly, we find ourselves being this amazing, impactful presence on the planet. This energy just naturally flows from us without us even realizing it. So let's start by defining what it means to be wholehearted. Now, I really could have strained my brain and come up with my own definition. But why? Because Brene Brown came up with an absolutely fabulous one, of which I'm now going to repeat. She says, wholehearted living is about engaging our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating courage, compassion, connection, to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done or what doesn't get done, that I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I'm imperfect, vulnerable, and sometimes very afraid. But that does not change the truth that I am worthy of love and belonging. So I believe when we practice a life from this space that we are able to set example for others, and they have the freedom to do the same. Does that make sense? So when we're our true, authentic selves, we invite others to be the same way. Hence, spiritual leadership. Trying to make the connection here. So how do we cultivate this sort of life? A life which we live, love, and lead from wholeheartedness. Because it is a process. It's not an overnight thing, I don't think, unless any of you have mastered this overnight thing. But it's a practice of constantly cultivating this. So I'm pulling from Dr. Brown's definition of wholeheartedness. We're going to give 3 main ingredients for wholehearted living. Everyone ready? Pencils poised. The 3 C's of wholeheartedness: courage, compassion, and connection. So first we must cultivate courage. And sometimes this is the hardest thing to do. Courage to tell our story. Courage to be our authentic selves. Now this can be scarier for some, more so than others. It's kind of scary for me. So in this world of comparison where we have to fit in and it's very important that we are able to identify our own values, our own strengths, our own beliefs, and our own opportunities for growth. And to live in such a way that these aspects of our life, these true aspects of our life, shine through. We have to resist the urge to hide. So how many of you sometimes want to hide? Oh, it's tempting, isn't it? It's tempting in those situations to want to hide who we truly are. But the call is to resist the urge to play small. Now, I've played small, well, literally, but I have played small in my life. But to finally get tired of playing small and to step boldly into who we are and what is ours to do, right? And this is not to say we have to have it all figured out, because we don't. Even Dusty doesn't. I know. Shock and all. This is what happens when you sit on the right hand. Oh, now I lost my place. No.
Instant karma.
Oh, me. Okay, yeah. But instead, we have to recognize the value and joy of living authentically. That we are home of the divine. I will repeat, we are home of the divine. Isn't that amazing? That the very presence of life itself dwells within us. And sometimes we have this in our brains, but to really kind of let it seep into our hearts, that the divine, the power and presence that is back of all things in the universe is within us. How can we play small when we truly understand that truth? Now, I can think of an example in my own life where I've kind of experienced this feeling tone of wholehearted living. Can you kind of get that feeling tone of what that would feel like, that passion, that joy, that excitement, that woohoo, get up in the morning? And it takes courage. And so this story, when I was thinking about in my own life, where have there been opportunities where I've lived wholeheartedly, and what's that felt like? And how can I cultivate living that on a daily basis? So, a brief story. About 12 years ago, I had to do 12 years ago, I agreed to do one of the craziest things I have ever done. And that's saying a lot. So a friend of mine was turning 30 and decided that it would be necessary, absolutely necessary to her well-being and to experience jumping out of a plane. And apparently this was not enough to be done solo, but she must rope her 3 of her closest friends to go down with her. Literally. So, this coincided with a very, well, I would say weak mental moment, but I was emerging from a very difficult time in my life. We've all had those, kind of cocoon sort of phases where you've been wrapped up and now you're this free butterfly. I'm like, yes, this is the opportunity, a symbolic gesture, if you will, of the new Ruth. The playing big Ruth, the living life to the fullest Ruth, the living life on the edge Ruth. And I'm not a risk taker. I'm a rule follower, surprisingly. But I'm like, all right, we're going to put all that away. So I was hyped up, and I felt alive. Let me tell you, I was excited and alive and vibrant. Now, that was just on the car ride there. Once we pulled in the parking lot, it took almost 2 people to pry my hands off of the car door. This is not a lie. That's kind of like life. Sometimes we're a willing participant. Sometimes we go kicking and screaming. I was the kicking and screaming. So after we waited about 8 hours, because we were supposed to get out of the car, do our little spiel, and then jump. It was 8 hours of rain delays, which I thought, is this a message? I hear you. Go back to bed. So it was time for us to jump. So then it took 3 people to actually get me on the plane. Because I don't know if y'all been around me long enough. 1, I have a fear of flying. An intense phobia of flying. And I really don't like heights. So this does not make a very good combination. But I really loved my friend. So like I said, it took 3 of them to get me on the plane, probably 3 hours to get me on the plane. It was not my finest hour. Unfortunately, this was all caught on video. But I was determined not to let my fear and what I could only be described as debilitating terror prevent me from embarking on this amazing experience. So once I recovered from hyperventilation, twice, we did a backflip off the back of this plane. And I'm telling you, I'm not lying. I have never felt more alive, more aligned, and surprisingly more at peace than I did on that descent. It was the most amazing experience. Now, I'm not sure if it was because all the blood had rushed to my head or adrenaline, but it was as if the very power of the universe was coursing through my veins. And it was just this amazing experience. Now, granted, when I hit the ground, I couldn't walk for a period of time because maybe it was just the adrenaline or the fear. But it was just, for me, it was like this pivotal point that despite fear, that I had stepped out in courage and had experienced this. And it started making me think, how many times in my own life, because of fear, had I not engaged in something and had missed out on the blessing and the lesson and the experience that it brought to my life. And I just felt like this whole universe was just inside me. And isn't that truth? That's the truth. So when we understand that truth, we can live wholeheartedly. Now, you can see that I survived. I will never do it again. I don't care whose birthday it is. I love y'all, but I'm not doing it again. Something on the ground. So that's courage. Courage to be our authentic selves. Courage not to be grounded by fear. Oh, that was a good analogy. Grounded by fear. So secondly, in order to experience wholehearted living, we must cultivate and practice compassion for both ourselves and others. So sometimes it's easier to be compassionate for others than it is ourselves, isn't it? At least for me it is. And so in the infinite wisdom of Webster's dictionary, compassion is described as sympathetic consciousness of others, sympathetic consciousness of others' distress, together with a desire to alleviate it. So when we become keenly aware of not only our own needs, but the needs of others, we're pulled to this life of love. We're pulled to this life of showing kindness. And we know that when we engage people in that way, how impactful that is in our own life and the energy it gives to us. I see that here in our community when people come together and serve not only our community, but serve others. It's the energy is different. The energy, it just calls us to a different way of being. And this compassion is more than just a sentiment. It is this understanding of the intrinsic value of not only ourselves, but others. Our desire to lift up, to support, to listen, to be willing to be vulnerable and open our own heart, living and loving with our heart open wide. Not to shy away, because this can be scary. Being vulnerable can be scary sometimes, but it's a necessary ingredient in wholehearted living. Everybody feel me? Yeah. Are we on the same page? All right, good. So number 3, this leads to the third C, connection. So wholehearted people understand the importance of connection with themselves, with other people, with the divine. Because we're born for connection, right? We're not born for Lone Ranger living. Janelle, we are not born for Lone Ranger. Janelle gave me an eye. We're not. I mean, sometimes we want to be, believe me. And I think there's value. There's value in getting those times and spaces where we're alone to connect with ourselves and to connect with the divine. But also to understand that sometimes we got to get out of our house and connect with other folks. And that can be challenging sometimes. But we're born for this. We're born for connection. We're hardwired to feel this. And this is like this really deep connection. I'm not a big small talk person, surprisingly. I'm an all talk person, but not a small talk person. But to really be vulnerable enough to see others and to allow yourself to be seen. And from this grounded space of understanding ourselves, understanding others, understanding the divine, we can live wholeheartedly. So to live from the heart is to cultivate the ability to stand fully in alignment with the divine within us. And really to live that reality out loud. To live from the heart is to stand truthfully, authentically, honestly. And our nurturing that ability to listen to that wisdom within us. And not only to listen to it, but to act on that wisdom. I can hear a lot of things sometimes, but it takes a lot of strength and courage to step out and to act on those things that we know to be true. So Ernest Holmes, our boy, Ernest Holmes, had his own definition of what it means to live wholeheartedly, although a little bit more complicated than Brene Brown's definition. If you know any of the writings of Ernest Holmes, he likes words. A lot. But what a brilliant man. And this, I read this quote and I'm like, wow, I just had to kind of share it with you because I think this also summarizes wholehearted living and what we as a Science of Mind community believe about wholehearted living and what that means on a practical basis. So he says, it is wonderful to realize that we can sit in the quiet of our own being and consciously direct a power greater than we for the definite purposes of helping ourselves and others. This power should be used for both purposes. For we have to get back to this simple proposition. We must use the power to help ourselves first, in order that we may establish a realization of our ability to help others. Side note, when we see how we can use this power and presence to transform our own lives, I can use this to help other folks too. All right, back to quote. If you would bring happiness to those around you, you must first be happy yourself. But before you can become happy, something has to happen to you that causes you to know that God is right where you are, or spirit is right where you are, or nature, whatever you want to call it, is right where you are. That good is the final power in the universe, and that love is an all-conquering force. You have to have confidence and assurance. And this kind of confidence and self-assurance comes only through having proved it to yourself completely, that there is a power greater than you are, and it is a power of good. And it is available, and you know how to use it. And the only proof you'll ever have is what it does to you and to others. I told you he liked words, but they're good ones, aren't they? That's wholehearted living in a nutshell. Understanding this power and presence within us. And I know we say that a lot. I know it seems very simple. And we can understand it in our brains, but to kind of step out of it and really live it. When we live from the space, it not only transforms our experience, but everybody around us. By how we live, by the energy that we give off. So he says by tapping into the awareness of our own being, the power within, and our ability to use this power, we create a life that speaks to our true selves, which we've already said is that divine presence. That's who we are. From a passionate and creative space, not a space of fear. When we operate from this creative space, amazing things happen. Who can attest to that? Amazing things happen. It completely changes how we see the world and how we see those in it. So this is living by design and not by default. And we've talked about this too. Sometimes we live in this, or I'll just say me, sometimes I live in this loop of default thinking. Same thinking, same responses, same thinking, same outcome. And I'm thinking, what in the world's going on here? Why the same stuff keep on happening? And I'm like, ooh, same thoughts. That's default thinking. You know, kind of like when you're on autopilot, how you can go from your house to your work and not really remember how you got there. Please tell me I'm not the only one that's done that before. Yeah. Our brains work that way. It's a necessary a function of part of our brain to work in this kind of automatic response. So it's not a bad thing. But instead of living in this default same thinking, same response, to consciously choose our thoughts and to choose the outcomes that we want. Because we know that when we use this creative force to create new thoughts, new ways of thinking, new ways of believing, new ways of experiencing, then consequently, we'll have new outcomes. We'll have new manifestations. We'll have new demonstrations in our lives. But first it begins with us. So it's kind of like, and I'm not sure why I'm stuck on these plane examples, but it's kind of like when you're on a plane, maybe it's because I have to fly next week and I have a bit of a fear, where the lovely flight attendants, you know, they're explaining in the unlikely event that we should experience an emergency, oxygen mask will drop from whatever, the ceiling. Please place mask on yourself, breathe normally before helping others. Now, I always think that's hilarious, this breathe normally stuff. Yes, we're going down. Oxygen mask. I'm going to breathe normally. No, that's not going to happen. Anyway, but that's kind of what the spiritual life and spiritual leadership is about, though. We got to put on our own mask first. And then we can help others, right? So when we live from a space of confidence and assurance that God is right where we are, His Spirit is right where we are, nothing is impossible. Absolutely nothing is impossible. Because we are the house, we are the home of this universal power and presence. With power, with love. And we can use these as guiding forces in our lives. So whether we realize it or not, whether we want it or not, we are all leaders. Our openness and our willingness to live wholeheartedly creates a chain reaction in our lives, right? And all those in our little sphere of influence, we all have them, our little sphere of influence. When we utilize this power and presence and really start living the life we want to live, because we can do it, then everyone around us starts thinking, hey, maybe I can do it too. And pretty soon, this transformative effect takes place. And we invite others to step out of their own fear and do the same. So I'll leave you with this quote by Marianne Williamson, which I believe sums up this understanding of wholehearted living, spiritual leadership, and its impact on us and on the world. And many of you have probably heard this, but I think it's good to hear it again. Our deepest fear is that we are not inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So this is our own call of spiritual leadership, through the cultivation of a truly wholehearted life. And so it is. So it is. So let's turn within just for a moment. As I breathe in and out, the wonderful presence and energy that is in this room. Aware of the so many individuals and hearts that have not only influenced my own life, but the energy of this community. I am aware also that there is one power and presence that is back of everything. That there's not a space where it is not found. It is always there. And so what's really amazing, what's really cool and absolutely mind-blowing is that I am one with this power and presence. That it is not something that is far off from me. It is not something that I have to strive and earn and struggle for. But instead, it has taken up resonance in this body, in this mind, and in this heart. And I know that if it is true for me, that it is true for every single person in this room. That we are the divine houses. And so from this space of unity and oneness and understanding, I speak a word for us in this moment. knowing that the life we live is the very life of the divine. Knowing that there's a space within all of us that is yearning for more and more and more of this life. There's a space within all of us that's yearning to be expressed, bubbling up, overflowing. A part of us that wants every day to wake up and say, wow, what am I going to do today? And so I'm grateful for this power and presence. I'm grateful for this understanding. I'm grateful for this awareness and for this amazing community, which is a beacon of light, a beacon of the divine, not only in my own life, but in this community. So I release these words into the universe that always ever says, yes, please give me more. I want to do more and more and more and more. And so it is.